I want to talk about interacting with billionaires over the years because you've profiled some high profile folks like Satya Nadella, Sam Altman. I think you actually went to like a karaoke bar with Marc Benioff. Is that real?
That was a weird story. Yeah, one of my first cover stories was Marc Benioff, the first year that we did Cloud 100, or maybe second year, but early on, almost 10 years ago now. And I went to San Francisco to meet with him, New York to meet with him, and then I went to Salesforce's corporate offsite in Hawaii, which was, an experience. And it was kind of the OG days of AI within Salesforce. They were debuting Einstein. If any of the CFOs or others listening have trauma or like a trigger about Salesforce Einstein.
Einstein and IBM's Watson, neither. I feel like it was like right idea, wrong time.
100%. I saw a funny joke that was like OpenAI is acquiring IBM Watson for $200 million. Or no, it was Meta. Yeah. Like, the meme of Meta taking talent from OpenAI.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Watson.
But with the Benioff thing, I'm in Hawaii or whatever. And he's like, well, next stop for me on my global tour is the Salesforce office in Japan. And he kind of dared me to go. And the nice thing about Forbes was we did have a travel budget. And I was able to tell the head of Forbes, we got kind of dared to follow Benioff to Tokyo. That might be interesting for the story. So they flew me back to New York and then middle seat economy, New York to Tokyo for 48 hours. So it was definitely a challenge, but I got to see how Benioff interacted with local business leaders in Japan. All the top leaders kind of came out for him. And then we sang karaoke with the CEO of Rakuten, which was the most bizarre experience of my life. Yeah.
Are these people like tethered to the reality like the rest of us, or is they're like this reality distortion field? What's it like?
It's like sometimes they feel normal, and then Rakuten, which for folks who don't know is this big e-commerce company, kind of the Amazon of Japan, has a karaoke bar in its headquarters. Just so that the CEO can like privately sing karaoke with other execs. And you're like, who came up with that? And it's like, so it feels normal until it doesn't. Like, I wrote a lot about WeWork over the years, and Adam Newman had all this charisma and could really own a room. And then he would do something like buy a startup that makes wave machines for surfing so that anyone could surf. And you're like, how does that make sense for WeWork? And it was like, there would always be that point where you're just like, okay, now we're in bizarre territory.
Yeah, I got to imagine hanging out with these people. There are moments where you're like, this makes no sense. Like a normal person wouldn't spend money on that or react to it in this way. But then like there are probably humanizing moments too, where like, I don't know, they're holding a screaming baby or they're answering like a text from their wife.
100%. I was part of the Forbes team that wrote a story about Microsoft's turnaround with Satya, and going out to Redmond and seeing how Satya works with his team and how being a dad of a child with special needs had made him think about things like accessibility at Microsoft. And I think give him this baseline of empathy. That really was eye-opening for me. Because I do think even with these billionaires, you have a sick kid or you have, tragedy in your family, that affects people across the economic spectrum. And I think like how you see people's humanity can be reassuring or refreshing as well. It's not like you're just always a court jester in the palace of billionaires being like, this is bizarre, which to be clear, if I went to the Bezos wedding in Venice recently, I would have probably felt that way, but I wasn't invited, so it's okay. But yeah, you see the full spectrum where folks are a lot more similar than you think in some ways. And then they do have maybe certain assumptions about how people live that are not what we would consider normal. So yeah.
I'm certainly more outgoing, like if I'm hosting a dinner or if I'm like doing a podcast. Like we were talking like right before this, and I try to like, it's not an act or anything, but like my voice does elevate, and like I try to be more outgoing, have more energy for these types of things. I imagine like a billionaire, I wonder if these guys are like always on, or if it's like then you start to talk to them in the back room and it's like, okay, like it drops a little bit and they're more level in kind of their energy in their interactions. Because I've seen interviews with like Marc Benioff, and that guy, it's like you'd run through a wall for that guy.
I think that a lot of the best business leaders that I've met, or the most successful billionaires, don't have great work-life balance in the sense that they are always on in some way. They surround themselves with friends who are really successful in other fields. Like, Benioff is friends with Lars Ulrich from Metallica, and he's friends with like the best surgeon in America, and he's friends with like a famous classical music composer from Japan. Like he surrounds himself with other excellent people. And I think that even if he's doing something like singing karaoke, he's still kind of on in the sense that he's rubbing shoulders with other kind of type A people. Melanie at Canva, like I feel like is someone who's just always thinking about Canva's ambition. I think Ryan Peterson at Flexport is always thinking about Flexport's place in the world. These folks they're almost like sickos in a good way, where they just like can't turn off their brains about what they're doing. And I do think that is a superpower. It can also make you maybe like a difficult person to be close friends with. They're never my close friends, so I don't have to deal with that part.
Yeah, they're obsessed. I like how you said it. It's like you're kind of sick in the head that you just keep running at this thing just nonstop. Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.